Welcome to the CharityVillage Connects podcast. I'm Mary Barrell. A recent TELUS Health Mental Health Index indicates that employees experiencing workplace conflict lose up to 55 days in productivity per year. The impacts of conflict at work are clear: lost productivity, but also stress and diminished mental health for the staff who experience it. In this episode, we explore the contributing factors, including power dynamics, racism and microaggressions, and mounting workloads. We'll outline an organization's legal requirements to take action and leave you with some practical solutions and strategies. Please welcome Paula Allen. Paula is the Global Leader, Research and Client Insights at TELUS Health. In this role, she manages the research agenda for TELUS Health, which includes primary research, exploratory data science, research collaborations, and meta-analyses. Paula is a well-recognized expert in all areas of workplace mental health: total health and well-being, learning strategies, disability and drug plan management, and inclusive workplaces. Welcome to CharityVillage Connects, Paula.
A pleasure to be here.
Well, let's do a quick check-in on the TELUS Health Mental Health Index. What's the data saying, and what trends are we seeing?
We're seeing quite a few. So the big news is continues to be that the massive decline that we saw in our collective mental health, so characterized by people who had, more compromised mental health becoming even more so, and those who didn't even have that much compromise actually being more on edge. We saw that happen in a significant way at the beginning of the pandemic for obvious reasons: change, upheaval, risk. But we haven't seen an improvement yet. So there's still a much higher proportion of individuals who are considered high risk in terms of their mental health now than there was in 2019.
A recent index indicated that workers who experience conflict at work lose an average of 55 workdays per year. Can you expand a bit on this research and discuss the implications for nonprofit organizations?
Yeah, it's extremely important for us to pay attention to this because you just sort of building on what I just said. Two of the strongest indicators of what we're seeing right now are our scores on anxiety and our scores on isolation. Those have been the lowest subscores in the mental health index for several months, and even prior to that, they were typically the lowest subscores. So anxiety and isolation are two things that impact how you show up at work in a very big way. And conflict contributes to both of them. There's many things that contribute, but certainly conflict does. Like when you think about when you're in a conflict situation, you feel without, you can't control it. There is a feeling of being threatened. Yeah, that gives you a feeling of being anxious. And that also gives you a feeling that you might not be supported. It makes you feel somewhat alone if there isn't anybody sort of, in the same place that you are in. All of those things are not great for our mental health, but all of those things impact our productivity as well. When you are feeling threatened, when you're feeling anxious, there's very little else that your brain can focus on. It takes a lot of effort to focus on anything else. Your primal need is to get out of that uncomfortable state. So if it happens on an ongoing basis, if it's chronic, that can really impact you and actually impact your physical well-being as well as your mental well-being and productivity.
Yeah, that flight or fight sort of response that we have to these feelings of vulnerability and threats is really a very physical as well as emotional and mental experience. How did the research define lost work days? What does this look like in practice in the workplace?
Yeah, we looked at that in terms of two main drivers. One was, the period of time where you're not able to focus fully on your job. And everybody has that. We all have ups and downs. Hardly anybody can focus 100% of the time. But when there is some emotional distraction, obviously it goes down. You're not able to focus, as we were speaking about before. So that focus, that ability to actually do your job and do it at the best of your ability, is one measure of productivity. The additional measure that we use, and we combine them, includes absence days. So time that you are taking off and you're not able to work. And what's very interesting is that without question, by orders of magnitude, the productivity impact of ups and downs in terms of our well-being and emotional health is much more impacted than absence.
And past indexes have explored the impacts of workplace mental health on racialized individuals, those with disabilities, and individuals belonging to the LGBTQ2 plus community. Can you discuss some of the unique workplace mental health impacts those individuals are facing?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is unique in terms of what people are facing. It's not unique in terms of the people. That's sort of really important to know. So when you're in a situation where you're experiencing a microaggression, there's a comment, there's a statement that throws you off balance, that's not predictable. That gives you a sense that you don't have a sense of belonging. Your stress level has to go up if you're a human being. So if you look at sort of a situation where you're experiencing racism or discrimination or exclusion for any reason, number one, it's not logical. It isn't logical. It's stuff that we sort of build as a part of, one of the flaws of society, these attitudes. And because it's not logical, it's not really predictable. Our brain goes to what's logical, and this isn't logical. So, we don't really predict it, even if it happens on an ongoing basis. When you have something happening that's not predictable, it really impacts you because our brains adapt to change. But when the change isn't predictable, when the change is frequent, we can't adapt. It really throws us off balance. The other thing that's really important, I mentioned isolation before as a major factor in our mental and physical health, and something that we really do need to make sure doesn't continue to be compromised. When you feel that sense of racism, discrimination, lack of inclusion, you cannot feel a sense of belonging. You cannot feel a sense of trust. And that sense of belonging, that sense of trust, is something that is our best counter to stress. So we're diminishing resilience when we have those experiences. So this is not insignificant. And we've also found in our research that when we have inclusive environments, when we have environments where inappropriate behaviors are not tolerated, the mental health and well-being of everyone, and not just racialized group, not just people who are differently abled, everyone, their mental health and well-being improves.
Well, it's very interesting to look at this because when we think about microaggressions and other potential forms of racism or discrimination in the workplace, I mean, that itself seems to fit one form of definition of conflict or the creation of a conflict or something that could cause conflict. What is the connection between the impacts of what you've described and conflict in the workplace?
Well, it's on a continuum. Yeah, we have extreme conflict where both parties, like literally, are fist fighting, or you have, other versions of it where, it's kind of a little bit one-sided and lopsided, which is sort of, harassment and bullying. And then you have your microaggressions, which are also typically lopsided, but people feel attacked. That's why we call it aggression, even if it is microaggression. So everything that we spoke about in terms of conflict, it really is on the continuum that we just mentioned. And I think some of the interventions that employers and leaders need to have are actually quite similar. If you saw, two people going at it, right? If you saw a fight in your workplace, I would hazard to guess that if you were a leader or a manager, you wouldn't tolerate that. You would intervene. You would say stop. You would pause, and you would make sure that you had the parties in a place where they were able to kind of reflect and move forward. Like it wouldn't just continue. We have legislation in this country that protects people from bullying and harassment, and that requires employers to understand what's happening and step in. I think the same mindset needs to be applied to the microaggression and the subtle things that actually can cause as much or more damage because they are ongoing. Which is, make sure if you see it, you speak it, you stop it, you make sure that you call it out, and that you reflect. You allow people to reflect. You help them get coaching and training. You help them understand how they're impacting other people. But I think leaders as well also have to realize that they're not immune from actually, contributing to this. And we, unfortunately, as a society, as a result of everything that's happened and the reset of our mental health, are all a little bit more on edge now than we were before. That's what we've seen in our data as well. It's so important for us to take a bit of a beat. When we feel that we're reacting, don't contribute to conflict, even if it's not sort of, a microaggression because of racialization or anything of that sort. Any kind of conflict, is going to potentially cause a damage. It doesn't mean that you can't have disagreement, by the way. It means that when you start attacking someone, when you start attacking them as a person, you are wrong, in generally speaking. But we sometimes do that. So I'd love to see people just kind of pause a little bit, recognize that we might be a little bit more on edge than we might even realize, and turn that conflict potential into curiosity. Somebody has a point of view. Somebody has said something. Somebody has done something that is making you feel frustrated. Well, work through that frustration by trying to understand and problem solve, and that'll yield much more benefits, and certainly counter some of the potential damage about going in the other direction.
That's such fantastic advice. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to leave our audience with that are related to workplace conflict and how it can impact mental health and the well-being of everyone in the workplace?
I do think that a major objective of every workplace absolutely and positively needs to be psychological safety. To the same extent where we would expect people to employers to foster an environment where there's physical safety. You shouldn't go into your workplace thinking that you are going to be physically harmed. You shouldn't go into your workplace, feeling that you're going to be psychologically harmed. And when you have that, then automatically you make sure that you have an environment where people are not being attacked, they're not being harassed, that when it happens, it's addressed really very quickly. You set a culture where you have that open ability to have disagreement without attacking the person. You talk about ideas as opposed to ranking people on whether they're smart or good or bad. All of that is helpful in a healthy environment, and all of that actually makes a more productive workplace in many respects as well.
Well, Paula, as always, it's such a pleasure to speak with you and hear your fascinating insights, your perspective, and the TELUS Health Mental Health Index report that includes that important data on workplace conflict, and your practical advice is really enormously important for nonprofit employers and professionals that are grappling with this issue. Thank you so much for joining us on Charity Village Connects.
My pleasure, Mary. Take care.